Chris, thank you so much for taking time with me today to catch me up on what you're working on with AdhereTech.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you are really tackling this idea of medication non-adherence with a novel product, a smart pill bottle. And now I know it's a lot more than that, so we can talk about the whole system you've developed around that. But let's start with the challenge first. How big of an issue is medication non-adherence?
Well, many people believe that medication non-adherence is the largest healthcare problem in America and around the world. I mean, just think about the last 50 years of science. We've developed what are wondrous medications for so many different conditions that actually work if you take them. And of course, the problem is that patients often don't fill scripts, which is not a problem we help with. And even if you do fill a script, you have side effects, you worry about affordability, you just forget, you feel fine. And so it's an enormous problem. It's over $300 billion in the US in avoidable medical expenses. And then for our primary customers, pharmaceutical manufacturers, all those patients that start a medicine and don't continue is very significant lost revenue.
So obviously, big financial burden. Let's take it down to the patient level and talk about a typical patient that really suffers because maybe they forget or it's just difficult to adhere to a plan.
Yeah, it's just so horrible what happens with healthcare in America. You think about it, you've been diagnosed with a serious condition, cancer, MS, schizophrenia. You get the diagnosis in the doctor's office, maybe you get 8 minutes with the doctor. He or she hands you off to an oncology nurse, say. They hand you a big pile of paper, patient education materials, and a prescription, and they send you on your way to deal with your health condition alone. And it's just so scary and it's so difficult for patients to do that. My father had lung cancer, luckily recovered, and my mother is a doctor and had to hover over him all the time, and it had side effects. He would try not to take it. He's fine now, but it was a very, very difficult time, and patients don't have that. If you have no support at home, it's very, very difficult for you.
Yeah, and the standard for most people is a big plastic, pill calendar that's incredibly confusing, and if you forget one. So I know it's a device and a platform, but start with the device, the smart pill bottle. Kind of how does that work?
Yeah, so we have a smart pill bottle today. The way that it works is it arrives at the patient's home already fully configured. The patients don't have to do anything. It's just a pill bottle. And what's great about that is if you can use a pill bottle, you can be in the AdhereTech program. But in addition to the holding pills, it has sensors, it's got a cellular connection to our back-end platform, so we know when the bottle's open, it's got an accelerometer, we can see when the patient moves it around, and through that we know if the patient is taking their medicine, we know what time they're taking the med, we know what window they're supposed to do that, and many of the meds we work with have very complicated dosing, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, every other day, sometimes once a week. It's very challenging for patients to manage all of that. But the great thing about those sensors is that if the patient is taking the dose as prescribed, absolutely nothing happens. No one calls them, no one bothers them, they're doing well. But that little bit of information coming from the home, going back into our platform, we had a patient a few months ago who started taking their med every other day after being very consistent for months, and this was oncology med, very bad. So we noticed that, and we sent a message to the pharmacy. The pharmacist called the next day and said, "Hey, what's going on? Oh, I lost my job. I don't think I'm going to be able to afford the med anymore." And they said, "Well, do you know we have a grant program?" They're like, "No, I didn't know that." So got the patient into the grant program, went back on meds, eventually got their insurance replaced. Wow. But otherwise, that patient would have trailed off, and horrific consequences for that patient as their cancer progresses, but also whoever's paying for that healthcare, chemo is next, surgery, just very, very difficult.
And all of that data is being pulled from the opening of the lid, the accelerometer, sort of a few key data points that all come together.
Right. That's right. And we collect all that data and we bring that back to the central platform where we have other information about the patient. We know what meds they're on. Sometimes we know more about the comorbidities they have. And then based on that and based on a model of what patient behavior should be on the back-end platform designed for each individual program, we then can send reminder messages if a patient is late for their dose. They appreciate that. But again, importantly, that real-time connection, knowing what's going on in the home, that's that information problem. Because there's so many care resources all around. Doctors' offices have, a large oncology practice we work with, Tennessee Oncology, they have a whole team of oncology nurses whose entire job is keeping patients adherent. But which patients do they call? Which patients are doing well? Which ones are having problems? That's what the platform solves.
Got it. Okay. You mentioned the platform. It's not just a bottle, it's a whole system. Why was it important? Aidia, is that what it's called?
Our Aidia system.
Aidia system. Why was it important to develop sort of that wraparound platform?
Well, the key thing here is that the smart device is great, but the information that's generated by that device it has to power some other healthcare process. So on the back end, we have integrations with pharmacies, with physicians' offices, and so based on what's going on with that patient, we can either give them regular reports to show how the patients are doing. So there's always scarce resources. If you're a physician practice, you have only so many clinicians who can actually reach out to patients. Again, who do you call? We give them those reports. They can see how people are doing. The doctors can then meet with the patients and talk about why it's very important. For example, we have one medicine where you need to take the med within a 3-hour dose window. And if you don't, you should absolutely positively not take that dose. Because if you take one dose late and another dose early, you are very likely to have side effects. And so we noticed at one pharmacy, the patients were taking the dose very, very late often. And so worked with them to design a new patient education program and got all those patients back on track.
Interesting, interesting. Okay, so last question. What's next for AdhereTech? What are you excited about for the next year?
I'm excited about a lot. We've got a great product development team. We're working on a new product launch for this summer. Still being orals, but that's going to open up a whole bunch of new categories for us, as well as clinical trials. We have one large trial we're doing today, but there's a huge opportunity there, and this new product will open that up. And then
new product beyond the smart pill bottle?
That's right. That's
okay.
right. Related product, but
Okay.
it'll work with orals that we can't work with now.
Got it.
And then we, in addition to the pharmaceutical companies and pharmacies we work with, we've just started speaking with health systems that have gone at risk, because adherence is much broader than the specialty pharma market that we're in today. The fact that some meds are expensive and some aren't, all drugs have adherence issues. And so if you're an AFib patient and you feel fine, you stop taking your med, well, you're going to end up in a very difficult personal situation, back in the hospital. The payer, the health system at risk is bearing that cost. So we're very excited about these new classes of customers and think we can do a lot of good in the world across a much wider patient base.
Awesome. Chris, excited to see those announcements come out this summer. Thank you for taking the time with me and just for all the work that you're doing, really helping fight medication non-adherence. And I know that's good for patients as well as for hospitals and for the entire healthcare system.
Yeah, and we really think connected care is the future. By getting patients connected to care in real time, we can make such a difference for millions of people across the United States and the world. So
Awesome.
thank you.
Thanks, Chris.